In the next hour, our person of interest is the Cabinet Secretary, the Ministry of Health, James Macharia, and we'll be talking to him about several issues, including some of Jubilee's flagship programs. The maternal health is one big one they have been on, and a lot of work and money has gone into that. But of course, as well, the ongoing strike of health workers in Mombasa, Ebola, tackling preparedness in the country. We'll talk about that as well. And we'll also talk to the Deputy Governor of Nairobi County about going cashless on parking fees in the capital. So do stay tuned for those discussions. But for now, we have our businessman, Michael Karanja, live in studio with us. He's all about changing landscape of the telecom industry this morning. It is good to see you.
Good to see you too, Sophia.
Yeah, what do you have for us today?
I wanted to start a business of hawking SIM cards, but the DG kindly reminded me that that might be a challenge, given the new rules that were instituted a few years back. So
you cannot just hawk SIM cards.
Yes.
Okay.
But the man of the hour is here, and he'll give us more details about that.
All right.
And the changing landscape of the telecommunications industry, and we're now joined by the Director General of the Communications Authority of Kenya, formerly CCK, for those that were not aware, Mr. Francis Wangusi. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Just to start off with, there has been a buzz of late in the telecom market, and there seems to be some rejuvenated interest in this sector. Perhaps what's driving this currently?
Yeah, I think quite rightly, there is a lot of beehive of activities in the telecom market. And one of the things that's driving this is innovation in the services that are using the network infrastructure.
Yeah.
Apparently, people got used to just using telecommunication services for voice and simple data like SMSs. But right now, quite a multiple of services have emerged, and more or less almost every day's transactions, particularly in Kenya, are being aided by the telecommunication service infrastructure.
Right. But you see, sometimes it has been said that innovation sometimes runs ahead of the regulations or the laws that are in place. How are you keeping pace with the kind of the dynamism of the sector as it is?
Definitely, that is the headache for the Communications Authority. As you rightly say, innovations and technology seem to move ahead of regulations and laws, because you cannot
predict perhaps what's going to happen.
You cannot predict what you are going to happen and prepare laws for what you don't know is going to happen. And of course, the consequences of the innovations and the technology that is driving this sector are the ones that determine what kind of laws we have in place. So at all times, I do expect that the laws and regulations will always be lagging behind the two.
Yeah. You've been at the authority for a while now, even before you were DG.
Yes.
Perhaps is there one bit of innovation or something that changed that actually caught you off guard and you didn't know exactly how you were going to tackle it?
Apparently, the introduction of mobile money transfer services in Kenya was one such an innovation that got almost all of us off guard, even including the banking sector. But definitely, you can't prevent technology, and you can't prevent innovation when they come.
Yeah.
So what we did was at least to assess the level of risks that could be involved and how we can be able to manage those risks. As a result of that, actually, we took a bold step to ensure that we encourage the mobile money transfer services to continue in this country. And apparently now we are one of the countries known for using the telecommunications technology to break away from the brick wall kind of banking services. And now we have almost encompassed quite a good percentage of the unbanked in Kenya into the banking sector.
Well, let's just go back to the nitty-gritties of actually the main reasons people actually get a phone, which is mainly back in the day, which was when it started, was just for voice, for making phone calls and SMSs. First of all, are you happy with the kind of level of penetration that we have for mobile services currently?
Well, I think I must say the level of penetration that we have for the mobile services in the country is pretty good, but not enough.
Yeah.
Because our desire as the Communications Authority of Kenya is to see, as soon as possible, all Kenyans connected. It is only when we include all Kenyans in the in the communications network that we are going to be able to help them contribute effectively to the socio-economic development of this country. But even after having said that, I know there are challenges here and there. Of course, the costs of rolling out the network infrastructure is one of the things, given the economic level of our country. Yep. Of course, the cost of devices themselves, which the users are supposed to be able to use them for access to telecommunication services is another. And of course, a host of other challenges that and even the laws that can be able to guide the expansion of the necessary services to be able to roll out very fast to reach all the other parts of the country is also a great challenge. So with all this, we find that we are not moving as fast as possible, but as the authority, we have now put mechanisms in place. Yep. To ensure that at least we deliver on that strategy come 2018.
Let's just talk, I know you're not into network infrastructure, but what do you think of areas that are underserved perhaps by the players that we have, especially when it comes to having the infrastructure there to allow services to be there? Is there kind of a way you can set up initiatives where you can put up some of this infrastructure and actually build the operators that are going to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. What we have put quite a number of a raft of measures in place to try and make sure that we compel the operators to reach areas where which are commercially undeserved, I mean, from their perspective, if we can put that in quotes. Yes. But what we are also doing is we have come up now with the Universal Service Fund, and this fund is which is now getting operationalized. At least now we have started collecting funds from the providers. Will be used to ensure that areas which are not commercially viable services are going to be able to reach there through the use of this fund. But even after having said that, most of the major network operators, we have given them rollout targets, like the recent renewal of the Safaricom license was also had conditions for them to be able to reach quite a number of counties. I mean, we call them sub-locations in the country that do not have access to mobile phones. So with those kind of measures that we are taking place, I mean, we're putting into place, we believe that come 2018, we should be able to have reached a level where every Kenyan can be able to access to communication services whenever they want them.
Yeah, just talking about the Universal Service Fund, I know it's received some opposition based on the way, the mechanisms that I guess operators don't understand exactly why they have to remit so much, or something dependent on the kind of turnover that they have. What are the kind of discussions that you're having with them just to get them fully on board and not have this kind of resistance that there is currently?
Well, I think the major the major point that operators have brought out in terms of this particular fund is how the fund is going to be managed. And we have already started discussions with them to assure them that the fund is going to be managed transparently and for the purposes for which it was established. Yeah. So they should not feel uncomfortable contributing to this fund. This fund is not going to be used by anybody else other than the operators themselves to be able to roll out the services to the unserved areas of our country.
And we all know that this is meant to just improve the kind of quality that people get. Absolutely. Which brings me to another bone of contention, which has to be the quality of service parameters. Yes. That the authority has been alleged not to quite meet the kind of standard, or going above and beyond what operators are capable of doing. Case in point, the parameters that you've set, I don't think any of the operators are meeting the set out targets. What parameters do you use actually to come up with a quality of service report?
Well, I think first of all, we have been having what we call 8 key performance indicators to be able to help us in determination of the quality of services. However, even those 8 key parameters are now not enough. We have acquired a new system to be able to measure more parameters, and more especially now moving away from just only measuring voice to also including data, because data has also become important. The quality of data in our networks it should be not something that need to be underscored. Now, but after having said that, what we have now done is within the framework of the law that was developed recently, we have enhanced the penalties. You know, previously the penalties were just minimal, and operators didn't really take it very seriously. Paying 500,000 shillings for a contravention was not really much for them. But of course, now with the new penalties, where a maximum of up to 1% of the annual turnover to be paid if they are making a contribution, to me is going to be an incentive and a motivation for them to start improving the quality of services. Secondly, I think one of the things that we also need to understand is the growth of the mobile sector in Kenya has been exponential. Even our own predictions before, we didn't expect that at such a time we could be having almost 80% of the Kenyans, connected to the mobile networks. So this pressure, I don't think even the mobile operators themselves were prepared for it when they were engineering their systems. Yeah. But of course, they have assured us, and some of them have come to us for more resources to be able to make sure that they now re-engineer their systems to be able to meet the standards and quality of parameters that we have prescribed.
One of the things that they need perhaps was spectrum, and I know Safaricom has been leading the charge in this, given the bulk of the kind of customer base that they have. So what kind of negotiations are ongoing? Because I know different players have different markets, have different sizes, therefore the infrastructure is stretched differently. But when you have, let's say, an operator, let's say like you, who's doing under a million or under that, and Safaricom was doing almost 17 or 18 million, how do you use the same parameters to gauge those two kind of individuals?
Well, I think first of all, those who come to look for a spectrum from us are those who are ready to invest in rolling out the networks. And of course, you do not expect to have a good customer base if you have not rolled your network and provide different quality, kinds of services that can attract customers to your network. Yeah. But what we know is that because of the pressure Safaricom has on its customers to be able to meet the type of standards in terms of quality, and of course the variety of services that of course they are innovating, they are looking forward to us giving them more spectrum. But we are not going just to give them spectrum like that. We have also attached quite a number of conditions. And one of the things that we want to do in order to avoid creating a dominant player who is going to bully around all the other players, we have come up with regulations, and thanks to the new law that it has enforced the issue of infrastructure sharing. So we have come out with the guidelines or regulations which we are bouncing to the stakeholders very soon in order for us to be able to enforce the issues pertaining to infrastructure sharing, including even national roaming, so that anybody on one network here going to Turkana and you find that your network is not in Turkana and another network is there, should not be inconvenienced from making a phone call or communicating simply because the supplier of his services doesn't have a network there. And in that case, we are coming with a raft of proposals or guidelines which we want to enforce very soon to ensure that those who have come to us to get resources to roll out will not deny them, but those resources are going to be shared. We also believe that small players who also want to come onto the market and ride on the infrastructure of those who already have established must be allowed and should be given an equal opportunity to do that, because we believe that is going to improve the quality of services to the consumer. We believe also that is going to enable the locals who do not have sufficient money into heavy investments of network rollout to be able also to provide services and grow in this particular industry. And we are going to introduce competition on various market segments that we have in the sector.
But when you say competition, where do you draw the line between a dominant player and someone who's ready to compete and has the resources to compete, but you do not allow them to get critical mass and actually roll out what they are capable of doing?
In fact, a good investor must have targeted a certain niche market, and must have known the strength and weaknesses of the players that are already ahead of them. If they come to roll out a network or a service they know from what strength they are coming in to be able to compete. But nonetheless, the law stipulates clearly right now that if you have more than 25% of the market share, you can be declared a dominant player. In fact, one of the sets of regulations that we are having is in the determination, with the guidance of this law, of who the dominant players are in whatever market segments. So you might be seen as a dominant player in the rollout of infrastructure, but when you come to other services, like, for example, maybe mobile money transfer services or any other services that are now emerging up every other day, I can't even just talk about all of them and finish, you will still be a dominant player in that market so long as you have over 25% of the market share.
But is being a dominant player illegal?
It is not illegal.
Yeah.
The only thing is that we are going to come up with conditions and guidelines on how a dominant player must behave in the field.
Yeah.
Because it's just like a big brother. If you are 50 kilograms of weight and another one is 120, you should not just come and stumble on you because you cannot be able to do anything on him.
Defend yourself.
So at least that guy of 50 kilograms must be protected.
An equal chance.
And an equal chance be given to him. So that is exactly what we mean by declaration of a player as a dominant player.
Which brings me to, you mentioned something to do with competition, and there's this new phenomenon called mobile virtual network operators. Just perhaps for the uninitiated, what exactly is mobile virtual network operating?
Mobile virtual network operators are those operators that are providing mobile services, including voice and data, but do not have infrastructure of their own. So what they do is they lease part of the capacity of the main network operator to be able to build their own switches and provide that kind of services. So other than that, they will provide the same services like a mobile network operator. So what in our own classification of licenses, we consider them to be application service providers, but now specifically geared towards providing those services by building switches that will enable them either to provide voice or provide data.
I guess since April, I think anyone who's been here cannot escape the headlines that we've had in business pages, which is asked to be Equity's subsidiary FinServ and Safaricom's battles over the rollout of this mobile virtual network operating infrastructure. And the case in point here is that when you say operators have to have certain capacity, depending on their capacity, when you look at a bank like Equity with what they're trying to do, and now that there's this kind of underlying battles with them and Safaricom. I know we met with them last Friday with regard to the kind of network that they're trying to roll out, which has to be the thin SIM. What's the guidance on that so far? Are there any resolutions that you made during that Friday meeting?
Well, I think the Friday meeting for us was meant to get to understand both sides of the story. Yep. What are the fears of Safaricom? And why FinServ felt that it should be able to introduce the technology of thin SIM. Indeed, the technology of thin SIM is not a new one. Yeah. In many countries, it is used for international roaming. But for us, the technology is a bit new in the sense that we are now going to use that technology for mobile money transfer services. So care has to be taken when we are taking a decision on the way forward. And for us to be able to to give an informed decision on the way forward with regard to the issue of thin SIM, we need to get as much information as possible so that they inform us on which direction we are supposed to take.
And is that still on the table right now, or is that off until you get further guidance on how that can be used?
Well, the issue of further guidance or no further guidance doesn't arise because we are the industry regulator. In fact, recently when we rebranded, the issue was we were added the autonomy. We were given the autonomy to be able to make our own decisions and, of course, be judged by the kind of decisions that we have given to the industry. So it is even a bigger challenge. So what we are doing right now is we are trying to sieve the information we have been given. Yeah. We are trying to think through how is it that we should do and we should not do in this wake of the new technology of thin SIM. But remember, even though risks have been identified, we know we need to look for mitigating factors for those risks. But we can also not at the same time prevent technology from moving forward. So we are in a situation where we have to balance between the two.
Yeah.
And in whichever way we are going to make our decision, it is going to be informed on the fact that if we go a certain direction, then it means probably the risk level is still so high that it may dwarf again the market which we are very proud of and known of in the world about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need this market to grow beyond the borders. So if we really find that the risk mitigations can be done and this can be able to move forward, then we will come to a consensus and move the way forward. Of course, right now we don't need to go back to either FinServ or Safaricom to ask for any information. They are waiting for the outcome of what we are going to decide. And I think we will give them a well-informed decision, and it will be a joint decision between the Communications Authority of Kenya and the Central Bank of Kenya.
All right. Yes, you've licensed 3 MVNOs so far.
Yes.
We've recently heard that Kenya Airways is in the offing to get a license from you.
Yes.
What's the maximum number of MVNOs that you're looking for? Because by way of just the way it operates, it's much cheaper than setting up your own network infrastructure. So what's the target you're looking for in this new innovation?
Well, for us, we don't have the maximum number.
Yeah.
But the maximum number is going to depend on the capacity that is available from the network operators. But what we want to do is to encourage as many as possible to come on board. First of all, it is our interest to ensure that we improve on the GDP of this country using the ICT sector.
Yeah.
Right now, we are contributing somewhere between 2.5 and 5. But we want to move even further. So in order for people to come and, for us to achieve that target, people must come into the sector and invest. And we encourage them to do so.
Is there anyone else on the list?
Well, we haven't yet officially received an application from Kenya Airways,
okay.
But when they come, we have no reasons to prevent them from joining the fray. We hope that they will come up with, they will come with new innovations that will even spur the market into growth further than what we have at the moment.
Francis Wangusi, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That has been Francis Wangusi from the Communications Authority of Kenya, just telling us about the changing landscape in the telecommunications market. We take a short break now, but don't go too far. We will be back with a person of interest who is the CS for health. Don't go too far.